You've got a country that's one of the most resource-rich on the planet, with a massive, vibrant population and just incredible potential. And yet, for decades, so many Nigerians look around, then they look at other countries that started in the same place, and they ask this simple, really uncomfortable question: why are we behind?
Okay, let's just dive right into the numbers. If you go back to the 1960s, Nigeria and Indonesia, well, they looked like twins, separated at birth. Both were big oil producers, both had these huge, diverse populations, and both were just shaking off colonial rule. But you fast forward to today, and wow, the difference is just staggering. The average Indonesian is now almost 3 times richer, and Jakarta has a working metro system while Lagos is just famously gridlocked. So what on earth happened?
And that's really the big question, right? This isn't just an emotional cry. For us, it's an analytical puzzle. We're going to break down the different paths these two countries took, look at the choices they made, and really try to figure out why the results are so different.
All right, so let's get into this story, this tale of two giants. We're going to compare the nitty-gritty policy decisions that literally put Nigeria and Indonesia on two completely separate tracks to the future.
You know, the first huge fork in the road was agriculture. It's kind of hard to believe now, but back in the 60s, Nigeria was a global powerhouse in things like palm oil and groundnuts. But then the oil money started gushing in, and an absolutely catastrophic choice was made to pretty much abandon farming. Indonesia, they did the opposite. They used their oil money to supercharge their farms, and they became a major food export.
And this number, wow, it just says it all. $10 billion. That's how much Nigeria now spends every single year importing food. Just think about that for a second. They're buying the very things from other countries that they used to sell to the world. It's a total 180-degree reversal.
And you know, this split wasn't just about farming. It went way deeper, right into the bedrock of what makes a modern economy tech, industry and infrastructure. So what did each country decide to build with their money? Well, Indonesia went all in on creating this powerful export machine, churning out cars, electronics, and clothes for the global market. Nigeria tried to do the same thing, but its huge, iconic projects like the Ajaokuta steel complex, well, after decades and billions of dollars spent, it has produced, wait for it, zero commercial steel. It's a story of successful execution versus just spectacular failure. And you can literally see the results of these choices in people's daily lives. Just look at the infrastructure. In Jakarta, you can hop on a modern metro and pretty much count on having electricity. In Lagos, you're stuck in legendary traffic jams, and it's basically a coin slip whether you'll have power. These aren't just statistics, they're two completely different human realities. Yeah, this chart right here pretty much tells the whole story in one picture. Manufacturing is a solid 20% chunk of Indonesia's economy. For Nigeria, it's half that, and it's actually getting smaller. This is the direct result of decades of different choices adding up. So, why? Why did Nigeria stumble so badly where others succeeded? A huge part of the answer lies in this fascinating economic paradox called the resource curse. We've got to talk about how Nigeria's greatest blessing, all that oil, somehow turned into its greatest poison. The resource curse. It just sounds crazy, doesn't it? It's this wild idea that having a ton of valuable stuff under your feet, like oil or diamonds, can actually make your country poorer and less developed in the long run. It is the ultimate paradox of plenty. And this right here, this is why the curse really dug its claws into Nigeria. This chart shows that a staggering 80% of the government's money comes from oil. When you're that dependent on one thing, it creates these dangerous incentives that can basically rewire a country's entire political and economic system for the world. Let me break down how it works. First, the easy oil money just flows in. Second, like we saw with agriculture, all the other parts of the economy start to wither and die because they can't compete. Third, and this is the real killer, accountability completely breaks down. See, when a government doesn't need to tax its citizens to get money, it stops caring what they think. And that leads to the final step. Politics stops being about governing and turns into a violent winner-take-all fight to control the money tap. But here's the thing. The resource curse isn't some kind of unavoidable destiny. Countries like Norway and Botswana have tons of resources, and they've managed to avoid it. So what was the X factor in Nigeria's story? When you really dig into it, the analysis points to one thing above everything else: leadership. So what was it?
After all of this, what's the one thing that truly separates these two paths? It wasn't ignorance, it wasn't fate, and it wasn't culture. The difference boiled down to choices. The specific, deliberate decisions made year after year by the people in charge.
And this next quote, wow, it's brutally honest and it gets right to the heart of the matter. You see, both countries have definitely struggled with corruption, but the kind of corruption was fundamentally different.
Let me break that down because it's a huge distinction. In Indonesia, corruption often worked like a transaction fee. You had to pay a bribe, yeah, but the roads still got built. The power plant came online. In Nigeria, the corruption was more like pure theft. They took the money, and you got absolutely nothing. It's the difference between a system that's corrupt but actually works, and a system that's just corrupt and broken. Okay, so let's bring this all together and wrap our heads around this. The analysis is really clear. Nigeria's situation is the direct result of choices, not some unavoidable fate. And to really accept that, we gotta take a hard look at the usual excuses and see if they really hold up. People love to bring up the usual suspects, right? What about colonialism? Well, plenty of former colonies like Singapore and South Korea have done incredibly well. What about ethnic diversity being too hard to manage? Well, Indonesia is actually more diverse than Nigeria. Okay, how about the idea that the world is rigged against them? Look at China and Vietnam. They faced way bigger obstacles and still managed to transform their economies. The fact is, when you examine them, these excuses just fall apart. So when you look at all the evidence, the conclusion is pretty clear. Nigeria's failure isn't some deep mystery. It's a tragedy, one born from a consistent pattern of choices made by its leaders over decades. And that leaves us with a really powerful final thought, doesn't it? If failure is a choice, then maybe, just maybe, success can be one too.